Color temperature. This is a great quote by Camille Corot. The most important things in painting are form and value. Form could be shapes and edges. Color comes last, like a friend you welcome. It's not a big deal. If you get your values right, the colors can be whatever. But if you get your values right and you've got the right hue, it'll almost always be just the right color. But they're secondary to values. Too many people go to the colors, they get seduced by the colors. You want to be thinking values first, colors second, always. It is important in the painting to think of your painting. Is my overall painting cool or warm? Is the temperature? And if it's kind of arbitrary, then make it one or the other. Because it looks disunified otherwise. And that's why the study of temperature is so much more important than in the hues themselves. And of course, the colors are very emotional. And generally speaking, the painting should be overall cool with a warm highlight or overall warm with a cool highlight. Not an even balance. And let's see. Okay, here's overall cool. Most landscapes are overall cool, greens and blues with a warm highlight. This is very overall cool, and literally cool in more ways than one. But and then an accentuate of the heat here where the sun is hitting. This one is overall warm. This is a landscape that's warm, but with cool highlights. In this case, the sky was actually blue in the scene, but if I'd made that blue, it'd have been much more dull, and it'd be too even a balance between the cools and the warms. But by making it a red sky, it dominated warm with cool. It's much more unified. This is overall cool with the warm, highlights. There was really a lot more warmth in there, but lifted out. Who are we back to? That old guy. Not only did he design it, but look what he did with his color temperature. Overall cool with a warm highlight. Too extreme. Okay. Unity, we're talking about two major elements, reinforcement and lines of reference, which tell one story. Here's one of an example of taking and trying to use reinforcements to create unity. What is the strongest single shape in this picture, would you say? This what do you call it? Hammock thing. Creates kind of a delta, flying delta shape. I saw that and I think, I'm going to repeat that. So I repeated it in the background forest here. This is down in Mexico. Didn't really look like this, but I repeated that delta shape over and over through there. I even put it in the rocks here, and the chicken, and in the shape of her dress. I repeated it, and of course it's all over inside the netting. I repeated over and over again to create that unity. I saw this strong shape, and I thought, I can repeat that and create, it pulls it together. Again, you don't look at it and say, oh, look at all those triangle shapes or delta shapes. But it does psychologically, subliminally pull it together. Same way here. Remember this one? This one, one reason I made the mistake of, besides it just didn't realize when I was doing it, but see this triangle shape? That was my reinforcement shape. And I repeated it over and over. This clothing up here, I manipulated it so that I repeated the triangles over and over and over and over again through here, and this triangle here, and the triangle created by our elbows, I accentuate them a little bit, so that I would have the same element. In fact, there's 21 different clear triangle shapes in that one painting. And the idea is you don't look at it and say, oh, look at all those triangles. You look at it and say, hopefully, well, that it's unified. It reads well. In this case, I should have subdued that and it would have been a better painting. Okay, here's a great example. Grandma, no. That's the wrong grandma. Whistler's mother. Talk about unity in terms of values and everything. It really ties together, creating this unified, look at these darks. Okay, last thing, perspective. Unity is created by how you handle all the steps above it, and so is perspective. Except for this one, the linear perspective we're all familiar with, is pretty much a mathematical thing. The most important thing is to know the eye level. You need to know the eye level because everything is based in terms of perspective on your eye level, whether you're standing or sitting or wherever you are, wherever your eye level is when you took the picture or if you're actually painting in plein air. Here is this painting from Mexico. Here's my eye level. And I know it's my eye level, even if I hadn't taken this picture, I know what the eye level is, because you see these bricks here, rocks, at an angle. Everything below the eye level in a plane, as it recedes from you, goes up towards your eye level. And anything on a plane as it recedes away from you goes down towards your eye level. So see these, they go up towards my eye level. Up here, they're going down towards my eye level. And here, but as you get closer, the degree of angle is less and less until it's exactly parallel. That's my eye level, wherever it's parallel. And it's important because if you're not conscious of that, you'll start painting the doors going the wrong direction, okay? So you always want to be conscious, what I'm painting above or below my eye level will determine what angle that receding plane should be. And see that you want to be conscious of those lines. Okay. Now, this is another thing that hopefully will accentuate the idea of eye level. I'm going to go through this quickly, but it is in your workbook. The first form of here's the eye level, by the way, which is convenient. See that fence line back there? It's about 6 feet high, and I was standing on about 6 feet. So that's an eye level. That was easy. The first, besides linear, is size perspective. If it's bigger, it's closer to you. Here's this calf's head. It's bigger. It's interpreted as closer. If it's smaller, it's interpreted as further away. Size perspective. Position perspective. If it's lower in the scene, you perceive it as being closer to you. If it's higher in the scene, you perceive it as being further away. Because everything hangs on the eye level. That's why it's so important, and I'll give you an example of that. You see this little calf's head? He is 2 heads below the horizon line, or the eye level. Anywhere a calf that height, anywhere, if I wanted to put him somewhere else in the canvas, he would always have to be 2 heads below the horizon line, or the eye line. So if I wanted to put him like down here, I have to make his head big enough so that 2 of them would touch the eye level. That way I can move my subjects anywhere I want to. If I want to put him up here, if I want to put him right there, he's got to be 2 heads below. Wherever I put him, he's got to be 2 heads. So if he's down here, he's going to be on the same field. It'll keep your perspective correct. It's a quick, easy way to determine correct perspective. And if you'll notice, all the cows that are 6 feet tall, their horns will cross that eye level exactly the same spot. And that way you can say, oh, I want that cow or one like him over here on the scene. Well, and you think, how do I put him? Well, see where that cow is in relation to the eye level, and then wherever you put him, make sure he's in that same relationship to the eye level. Okay, here is a scene from South Texas. And we're going to look at 2 parts of that scene, one from up here, one down at the bottom, and compare them. And we're going to look at aerial perspective. Value is the first consideration. This one, what happens to the value? It's lighter. Shape, what happens to the shapes? They get very indistinct as they go away. What happens to the edges in this is distant? The edges become very soft and indistinct. What happens to the color temperature? Cools down because air filters out yellow. Yellow is the complement of blue. So as you filter yellow out, everything goes blue. Color, what happens to the color? Look how intense this color is. Look how grayed down and dull that color is. Okay, so those things, it's how you handle those first principles of the divine setup determine how well your perspective is going to work in terms of your aero perspective, which is very important, even more important than linear in many ways. Now here we got a spot that is grayer, duller, softer, indistinct. Just about every cue tells you that that thing is further away than either one of these, right? It's smaller, it's higher in the field. Everything tells you it's further away. Look what happens when I move it there. Now, where is it in relationship to those two things? Is it closer or further away? It's closer. It's got to be closer. Why? It's overlapping. It's in front. So overlap trumps everything. It's the most important principle of perspective. If something's in front of something else, it's closer to me, and that other thing's further away. So I really emphasize overlap. I want to get all the other things right, but you know, when you're painting representational art on a two-dimensional surface, you've got to be very conscious of every way you can indicate 3 dimensions. And you know, cheat wherever you have to. Push if it's a little blue, go a lot bluer. You know, do things to create a greater dimension, because you're taking 2 dimensions and hopefully creating an illusion of 3 dimensions. So you got to really know them all and know them well. So in looking at this picture, look at the overlap I did, and you'll see this in a lot of my work. I'll have fields of value going across here, where this dark overlaps that light, and that light overlaps that dark, and this light overlaps that dark, and that dark overlap just steps you through. This little green grass overlaps that dark shadow. That dark shadow does things to overlap. And you got these fence posts overlapping several fields of value going. And then you got this big old tree, overlaps everything. That's why foreground images that overlap a lot of things in the background are so important to create 3 dimensions. That's why you want to have, as much as possible in your landscapes, something in the foreground that overlaps several areas. It will create a huge sense of 3 dimensions, just that alone, because it overlaps these trees in the background. Now you see these right here, this lower in the field, it's bigger. It tells me that it's smaller, closer to me, but it would have been even more powerful if I'd had one of these bales of hay slightly overlapped. If this had overlapped another bale of hay, that would have even created a little more sense of 3 dimensions. This is clearly higher, smaller, and grayer. So sure, it's further away, but if it had been overlapped by that, there'd been no doubt. So in terms of perspective, ambiguity is your enemy. Okay? You don't want to be ambiguous. You don't want to have 2 objects out here that are supposed to be separated, but there's nothing to tell you, well, I'm not sure which is closer. You could have 2 bushes out here. One bush just may be bigger, but it's actually further away. So pull them over and overlap. Take away all question of whether they're any ambiguity about which is closer. So that's the key to perspective, is overlap and all the others, but overlap is the most critical. And if you'll look at some of my pictures, you'll see that I really use overlap. Okay, that's all the presentation. And by the way, I just wanted to mention before I forgot, the reason I emphasize going through these 7 principles that we've been going through. Have you ever been in a situation where you learn a new word that you've never heard before, or you think you've never heard before, and then all of a sudden, you're hearing that word all the time, okay? It's always been there, you just never were conscious because you didn't know what it meant. Well, it's the same way with these 7 principles. Some of them, you've never really considered them as discrete, individual little units of information. You never thought about values and shapes and so forth this way before. But now that you have, you'll be much more conscious of them because you've been introduced to them. You don't know everything there is to know about them, but now you're conscious of them. And hopefully, and this is what I talk about in aesthetic categories, you will start seeing the world in aesthetic categories. You'll be looking down the road as you drive, and you'll be looking at those trees off in the distance. Instead of thinking of them as trees, you say, look at those big bluish green shapes. And gee, these ones that are closer to me look a lot more yellow. But you're thinking of them in those hues and values and shapes, those aesthetic categories, instead of saying, oh, look at these trees and those trees up there, and you're not even aware of the difference that these trees are much more yellow because they're close to you.